$11,000. That was the raise. He did the arithmetic in the parking lot before he drove home, and it came to about $640 a month after tax. 14 months later, he had less room in his life than the day before he got it. Not less money. That part matters. His income was higher, his balance was slightly higher, and every statement agreed that he was doing better. What had shrunk was the distance between what came in and what had to go out. That distance is the only thing a raise can actually buy. There is a window after a raise that nobody describes, and it is short. About 90 days. In that window, a set of costs attach themselves to the new income, one at a time, each one reasonable, and by the end, the raise has been fully spoken for. So this is 90 days after one ordinary raise, cost by cost, with a running total. One of the costs did not arrive in those 90 days. It waited until the following spring, and it was the only one that ever mattered. That one comes last. Day 0 is a meeting that lasts 11 minutes. His manager says the number, says it is well-deserved, and asks whether he has any questions. He does not. He walks out, and the first thing he feels is not happiness. It is relief, which is a different chemical entirely. Relief is worth pausing on. Relief means he had been carrying something, and the something was not solved by $11,000. It was the gap between his fixed costs and his income being too narrow to absorb a bad month. Relief says the gap was the problem. In the parking lot, he makes a plan, and it is a good one. Bank all of it. Do not change anything. He has read that this is what sensible people do, and he means it completely. He drives home intending to keep his life exactly where it is. The plan does not fail because he is weak. It fails because he never has to break it. Not once in 90 days does he decide to spend the raise. Every cost arrives attached to a decision that was about something else, and the money is a footnote inside it. Day 3. Groceries. He does not buy anything different. What changes is that he stops turning the box over to check the price of the second cheapest option. That is $30 or $40 a month, invisible, and it is the only cost in this whole story he could reverse in an afternoon. Hold on to that, because it inverts what people expect. The grocery drift is the one that gets blamed, and it is the one that does not matter. It has no contract, no term, and no penalty. He could put it back tomorrow and nobody would need to be told. Day 9. There is a garage 2 blocks from his office, and he has walked past the entrance for 4 years. $90 a month for a reserved space, which buys him 20 minutes each morning. He signs up on his phone while standing at the entrance. That is the first one with a term on it, and nothing about the moment feels like a commitment. There is no ceremony. There is a button. 20 minutes a morning is a genuinely good trade at $90, and it will still be a good trade in March when he needs the $90. Day 21. His phone screen cracks. The repair is $210 against a device that is 3 years old, so he does the sensible thing and replaces it. $50 a month for 24 months, added quietly to a bill that already existed. Notice where it went. Not onto a new line in his budget, onto a bill he already pays and already ignores. That is how most of these costs travel. They do not create a new obligation he can see. They enlarge one he stopped looking at years ago. Day 30. The first full paycheck at the new rate. $640 more than the last one. He looks at it for a moment, feels the thing he expected to feel, and then does not move any of it anywhere. It sits in the checking account. Money that sits in a checking account is not saved, it is queued. There is no decision to spend it and no decision not to. It simply remains available, which means the next 30 small decisions get made against a slightly larger number without anybody choosing that. Day 33. A streaming service asks whether he would like the tier without advertisements, and a storage plan says he is nearly full. $12 and $18. $30 a month total, agreed to on 2 separate evenings, neither of which he would remember a week later. Both are under the threshold where a person stops to think. That threshold sits low for most people, and every subscription business in the country knows roughly where it is. Below it, the decision is not really made. It is simply not resisted. Day 40, at his kitchen table, somebody says the sentence, "We can afford it now." It is said warmly, and it is technically accurate. It is also the moment the raise stops being his and becomes a household fact, which is a much harder thing to take back. Once a raise is a household fact, undoing it requires a conversation about somebody else's expectations. That is why the sentence matters more than any single purchase. He can cancel a subscription alone. He cannot quietly reverse something two people have started planning around. Day 47. He joins a gym. $70 a month, 12-month agreement, cancelable with a fee. He goes 11 times in the first month and 4 times in the second. By the following spring, he will be going about twice a month and still paying $70. This one is not really about exercise. He is buying a version of himself that the raise made plausible, and that version does not show up. Almost every fixed cost in these 90 days works this way. He is not buying the thing. He is buying who the thing implies he is. Day 55. A birthday. He spends about $60 more than he would have in March. It feels good, it is remembered by somebody, and it never repeats itself in the same form again. It is not part of the running total, because a gift is not a subscription. So there are two categories forming here, and they behave nothing alike. One is spending that goes up and can come straight back down. The other is spending that goes up and then requires a phone call, a fee, or somebody else's agreement to come back down. Day 62. Open enrollment. He adds the dental and vision package he has skipped for 6 years and a policy for the dog. $60 a month between them, deducted before the money ever reaches him. He will not see these again until he goes looking. That last part is the interesting mechanism. A cost taken before the paycheck arrives is not experienced as spending at all. It changes what he thinks his income is. Within 2 months, $640 has quietly become $580 in his own mind. Day 70. A storage unit. $40 a month for the things that stopped fitting when the spare room became an office. He tells himself it is temporary, and he means it sincerely. Temporary is what everybody means on the day they sign a storage agreement. Stop and count. Parking. The phone. 2 upgrades. The gym. The insurance package. The storage unit. $340 a month. All of it under contract. None of it decided in a moment he would describe as spending the raise. He still feels comfortably ahead. Day 78. His lease ends, and the dealership has already run the numbers for him. The Model 1 Class Up is $240 a month more, which is affordable in a way it genuinely was not in March. He signs on a Saturday morning. Somebody at that dealership knew his approval band had moved before he walked in. That is not a conspiracy, it is how credit works. Institutions see a raise faster than a household adapts to it, and they arrive with an offer sized precisely to the new number. Day 90. $580 a month of new fixed obligations. $60 a month more going into savings than before. 640 in, 640 accounted for, and not one moment in the whole quarter where he decided to spend a raise. If somebody asked him that week whether the raise had changed his life, he would have said no, not really. He would have meant it. Every individual cost was small, sensible, and separately justified. The only place the raise is visible is in a total nobody sits down to compute. That is the actual defect. Not one bad decision, but the absence of any place where the decisions are added up. A household has a budget for categories and a balance for the month. It has nothing that shows what its fixed costs did over one quarter. Here is the mechanism stated plainly. A raise is not income. A raise is an announcement to every cost in your life that there is more room, and costs negotiate. They do not ask for all of it. They ask for a reasonable share, one at a time, and they are patient. Costs also ratchet. Going up requires one button, one signature, one Saturday morning. Coming down requires a phone call to somebody paid to keep you, a cancellation fee, and in several cases, a conversation with a person who liked the new arrangement. The two directions are not symmetrical, which produces the contrarian part, and it contradicts most advice on this subject. The danger of a raise is not that you spend it. The danger is that you convert variable spending into fixed spending. Anyone can stop buying lunch out. Nobody can stop buying a lease. The standard warning tells him to watch the coffee, the takeout, and the impulse purchases. Every one of those is reversible in a week. Meanwhile, the parking contract, the lease, and the 24-month phone plan get waved through because none of them looked like indulgence. There is one number that describes a financial life, and it is not income. It is the gap between what arrives and what must leave. His income rose by $11,000. His gap rose by $720 a year, which is $60 a month. 640 in, 60 retained. Under 1/10 of the raise reached the only number that matters, and the 9/10 did not vanish into waste. It went into things he uses, mostly likes, and cannot easily stop paying for. That distinction matters, and it is uncomfortable. Waste can be cut. What he built in 90 days is not waste, it is structure. Structure is what you have to dismantle, and dismantling happens in the month you can least afford the disruption. Every household has a floor, which is the smallest amount it can run on for a month without anything breaking or anybody being told. In March, his floor was one number. By June, it was $580 higher, and floors do not move down on their own. A floor is not really an expense. It is a constraint on every future decision. It sets how long he can survive without income, how big an emergency he can absorb quietly, and which job offers he is permitted to consider. He did not know he was setting it. For most of the following year, nothing happens. He is not struggling. He is not behind. He has a better car, a shorter walk, and a gym membership he barely uses. And if you asked him, he would tell you the raise was fine. It was fine for 11 months. Then the following spring, the thing that had been waiting arrives. It is not an emergency. There is no accident, no layoff, and no medical bill. What arrives is an offer, which is the part nobody plans for, because an offer does not look like a cost. A smaller company, work he actually wants, a person he respects running it. The role pays $9,000 a year less than he earns now. In March, before the raise, that number would have been survivable. He runs it twice, and both times it comes out the same. $9,000 less is about $500 a month after tax. His new floor needs $580 more than his old one. The lease has 20 months left. The parking is annual. The gym has a fee. The phone has 14 payments remaining. So he says no, politely, and he gives a reason that is true without being the reason. The timing is not right. He does not say that a car lease signed on a Saturday in June decided this, because he has not connected those two things and probably never will. This is where the title stops being a figure of speech. The raise did not make him poorer in dollars. It made him poorer in the only currency that matters at a moment like that one, which is the number of futures still available to him. A gap between income and obligation is not idle money. It is permission. It is the ability to leave, to wait, to be sick for a month, to say yes to something that pays less and is worth more. He converted $11,000 of permission into a shorter walk, and the symmetry is cruel. The raise was given precisely because he was good at the job. Being good at the job produced the money produced the floor, and the floor is what kept him in the job. Nobody designed that. It simply closes. There is a version of this that works, and it is not restraint. Restraint has already been tried by everybody. It is a rule about the window. For the first 90 days after a raise, No new fixed obligation. Variable spending is unrestricted. Contracts wait a quarter. The window works where willpower does not, because it does not ask him to want less. It asks him to wait. Almost every cost in this story would have failed a 90-day delay, not because he would have refused it, but because the moment that produced it would have passed. The second half is smaller and older. Move the increase out of the account before it is available to be queued. Not the whole amount, and not for virtue. Enough that the number he sees when he decides something is close to the number he saw in March. One note on the arithmetic here. The man in this story is a composite, and every figure attached to him is an illustration built to be internally consistent, not a record of a real household. The mechanism is the point. The dollars are there so the mechanism has somewhere to stand. None of this is an argument against raises. A raise is the correct thing to want, and he was right to be pleased. The argument is that a raise is a raw material, and 90 days is how long you have before something else decides what it gets made into. Which leaves one question worth sitting with. If a raise gets spoken for in a single quarter, what happens across a decade of them, to somebody who never once felt like they were spending? That is a different arithmetic, and it starts with 9 small charges nobody ever cancels.